Greetings, brothers and sisters of Lighthouse Bible Church. Last night, Michelle and I had a marvelous evening watching videos on YouTube and listening to some of our favorite songs. And oftentimes I force Michelle into listening to music from the 60s. And last night we were listening to some of those songs, and she said, Michael, these are really good songs, but you just can't dance to them. So the next thing you know, we were on dance videos and having a great time with some of her favorite dance singers. And we're going to listen to a few words and some of the songs that somehow or another have come alive again in the 2020 era as they were in the 1960s era. But before we do that, I would like to say hello to Eleanor. Eleanor, I know that you've been separated from us and now separated from your family and those that you love, and I can't imagine what it must be like to be in a nursing home at this time with this horrible word called quarantine. But we do think of you often, and if anybody can handle the difficulties there, we know that it would be you. And so our prayers are with you during this time. And also I'd like to make an offer to anybody in the fellowship that would like to come up here maybe for a little bit and spend some time here. I know often people have called me and said, can I come up there and pray or just come up and walk around? And you're welcome to do that. Monday, the school that we have been renting to is moving out, so Monday is not available. But after that, if you would just like a few minutes or a few moments here, surely Amy or myself can open up the building and you can spend some time here and just tell us when you leave and we'll come back and lock it up. But I think all of us know that times are changing. It was nice this week to see that some states are opening up and some individuals are deciding to open up whether the state tells that they can or cannot. It must be a very difficult place to start a business and to see that business now on the brink of bankruptcy because other individuals are making decisions that aren't going to lose their jobs. I can understand the difficulties that would have. Surely here at Lighthouse Bible Church, we feel the same way in some of these aspects. So continue to pray for our government leaders and those that have the power to tell us what we can and cannot do at this period of time. Even though we find sometimes they seem to be overstepping their bounds, but hopefully within May or June we'll be able to have our fellowship back together and be able to enjoy those times together. But these seasons have changed, and I think as these seasons have changed, they have allowed us to be able to look at things that were changing. And I think growing up in the 60s and 70s, there was so much turmoil going on and so many things were changing, and it was very good for us that period of time. And so those songs really become very important to me in my life. And I don't think that there is anything new under the sun. Come senators, congressmen, please heed the call. Don't stand in the doorway and don't block the hall, for he that gets hurt will be he who has stalled. The battle outside's raging, and it will soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are a-changing. And I hope that that message that Mr. Dillon was singing to the politicians in his day will be a message that our politicians will also hear in this day. But also, we have all known times in our life where we find ourselves in such difficult and trying times and seasons and situations that we find ourselves in, and somehow or another we have to keep our eyes on something else. And we talked last week of how Mr. Rogers' mother said, always look for the helpers, always look for the helpers. And I would say at this period of time, always look for the orchestrator, always look for the individual that is the conductor of all of this, that can take all of these things and work these things together where somehow or another beautiful things can come out of these situations in our life. And surely I think many of us know that already in our life, the beautiful things that have been happening in our life and things that we would not have thought to be a big thing in our life, and all of a sudden these times, so to speak, have allowed us to be able to minister to other people and other people minister to us and to hear about a need. I was talking to somebody this week, and I was telling him that, as a church, we could offer to give food and we can do those types of things, but surely we're not the experts in that, and nobody in our fellowship has asked, or at least inquired as to how we might be able to help them out. But surely we feel called, as you would feel called. And I had mentioned to them that we were going to give an offering from our treasure chest, so to speak, and it would be to the Cleveland Food Bank, because they are doing a great job during this period of time, and they are the experts. And they mentioned to me Medina Creative Living, and they told me about individuals that have disabilities, whether it's physical disabilities or sociological disabilities, maybe they're autistic or in situations like that, and they're living by themselves or living in group homes, but they've also lost their jobs. And in losing their jobs, they don't have the ability to be able to eat. And so this Medina Creative Living has taken up this cause, and people have donated, and they were running out of money to provide food for them. And I said, well, this is a great idea. So we sent out a check to them this week, and maybe we'll put it on our website. Maybe it might be something that you would like to do, something that the times are changing, and to be able to help those that truly can't help themselves. You know, when God looks at our money, he says, honor me, honor your family, honor your future, and honor the poor. And in this situation, the poor are these individuals, and many of these don't have anybody to help them out. And if they do have somebody to help them out, they're older and they don't have sometimes the resources to be able to help them out. So hopefully you'll be able to look, and you'll be one of those helpers that Mr. Rogers' mother talked about during these times that they are changing. The conductor is doing things, and he is working. And by doing things like this, not only does he say that if you give to somebody that is poor and they can't repay you, God says, I'll become your banker. I will repay you the way that you should be repaid. I think it's easy for us to simply say, we don't need anything. This is something that we should do. It's our obligation to do, and it is our duty to do. We're not providing a mercy to anybody. And yet, in this situation, God obligates himself, and he makes this promise that I will be your banker. So if you give to this individual, or you give to that organization, and you're helping those that can never repay you, there's no possible way they can repay you, then I will engage to be the one that repays you. So I think during this period of time, we can actually see great blessings in our life if we're willing to really reach out into these difficult times and see this. The passage that we're going to read again today is a passage by Mary Magdalene, and it's something that she really wants us to know. She wants us to know that the times were changing for her, and how in this small moment of time she was just overwhelmed with grief and overwhelmed with sorrow. And it's not something that she just wants to be forgotten. Neither does the Apostle John want us to forget this, nor does the Holy Spirit want us to forget this. And I don't think that we would see this as clearly, at least I wouldn't see it as clearly, if we weren't able to go through these times and realize what we did during these period of times, and of course the songs that will come into our own life at this period of times. It's easy for us to get set in our ways, even if it's for a short period of time. And grief is something that can be with you all the time, but the intense grief in our life that is there when it's measured in the totality of our life, it is a short period of time, the intense part. And I think in Mary's life, she wants us to know that she's in this short period of time of intense grief and sorrow, and something is going to happen. Something is going to change that's going to bring her out of this. But it's not easy for her. You know, we have the old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and that is true for most of us as we grow older. But there's also those times in our life where we're just in a very short season of difficulty, and we have to come to this place in that short season of difficulty that we're able to see other things. So as we've entered into this time of social distancing, I think most of us can see how hard it is to be consistent as a social distancer. Michelle and I went to Target this week, and she had to get out of the house. She had to get out of the house, and they said, let's go. And so we went to Target, and you can see that most people don't follow the 6-foot rule. They are just moving around and trying to do. And with Michelle, we find ourselves in a situation where she cannot even dare to get herself in a position to be contaminated. So she went and sat in the car, and I finished our time in Target. Last week, we did the Lord's table with Rich and Scotty here with me, and you know, I'm telling them to come in closer so that everybody can see, and they're both looking at me. No, it's 6 feet. That's where we have to be. I don't know how that came out on the camera last week, but it was nice for them to give me a simple reminder. And as usual, I think in our lives, it takes uncharted waters for us to see something that was extremely important. And I think John and Mary Magdalene, and of course the Holy Spirit, are going to take this time that we're in to be able to show us something that we might have just overlooked before. And I think in life that is very true with us in our walk with God. I think we saw earlier when we listened to the words of Mr. Dillon how music and songwriters can really come alive in a different time. They meant the song for the 60s, but then it is very relevant in the 2000s. Last week I mentioned how my subconscious is also haunted sometimes by Mr. McCartney's Mother's Words from a Dream. When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me speaking words of wisdom, let it be. I know that a lot of you are caught up in a lot of the news because there's just so much of it out there, and so much of it with this conspiracy or that conspiracy or this hatred or that hatred, and they're doing their best to just continue to fan the flames of this situation that we find ourselves in. And I find myself in times of trouble with Mother Mary coming to me speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Those words have come into my mind numerous times in my life as an adult, and I heard those words when I was just a child. And even then I knew that this song would be important to me. And it's interesting that Paul McCartney, when he talks about this song, says many people take this in a way that is religious or in faith, and I don't have any problem with any of those things. I think that the words of this song were meant to be able to minister to people during very, very difficult times in their life. But what jumped off the pages during this season of social distancing or quarantine, and how John and Mary want us to know this aspect of their times that immediately followed the resurrection. And we find these words, touch me not. And there's a whole new meaning to this, I think, in the climate of social distancing. What is Christ saying to her? What type of a relationship did they have that she felt comfortable doing this? And why is the relationship changing now that she can't do it? Will the relationship change in the future where she will be allowed to show this avenue of love that she has in her life? Mary Magdalene is surely indebted to her rescuer. When we looked at Palm Sunday, it said, Hosanna, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. And basically the idea there is, Hosanna, blessed is he who's going to come and rescue us and save us or to help us. And of course they thought this was the Romans that they needed to be delivered from, and that Jesus would come in and he would deliver them from those. And Mary too probably caught up in some of those things, as well as some of the other disciples in his life. But she knew that he was a rescuer. She knew this personally. She had been possessed of 7 demons, and this beautiful time that they have together, and she truly is one of the inner circle. I wouldn't put her with Peter, James, and John, but she is closely in that, and she finds herself being the one that when Peter and John come to the tomb, the gardener's there probably, and he doesn't say anything to them. He lets them leave. He waits for Mary to come, and he gives her this marvelous blessing or favor to be able to be the one that would be able to say, I have seen the Lord. She is the apostle to the apostles. It's the first one that is going to bring this message to other individuals. I think she felt quite comfortable expressing this love language during and after his death, and this was physical touch. She had this ability to be able to help him or to love him in this way without any other connotations in this. I think if we look at these love languages in our life, and occasionally Michelle and I will take that test again, they're surely not all of the languages, I would think, of love, but they are truly a very good comprehensive list, and it's not rare for me to give out the 5 love languages to couples that might be going through some difficult times. And of course, there are words of affirmation, acts of service, receiving of gifts, quality time, and physical touch. Quality time, by far, they tell us, is the #1 response, that people really need that. And surely at this period of time, many of you are with each other more than you normally would be with, and you're really looking for less quality time. You're looking for some time away. In Michelle and I's life, she lives, as a project manager, I live as the pastor of the church, and so we our lives are intertwined, but we don't have that really nice time, and that's why we really enjoy, getting in the car and driving somewhere and spending a week at the beach. That to us is very quality time, and it's very much needed in our life to tell each other that we love each other and that we want to spend some time with each other. But there's a tie between #2, and that is words of affirmation and physical touch. So these are very important, and I think that we see these things very important. in our lives. I mentioned to you last week of how Serafina, when she saw me recently, ran to hug me. It wasn't because her mom and dad told her to do that. It wasn't because I put out my arms like this. In fact, we're trying to stay away from it because we don't want to in any way damage or hurt our grandchildren. And surely Scott and Naomi don't want to do anything to cause their parents who are in that group that are most worried about. But Serafina could have cared less about any of those things, and she ran to hug me. And it was Serafina's way of telling me through physical touch, I love you, Grandpa. I love you. And it's not something that she's taught. It's just something that is innate. It's natural. So when you see Mary Magdalene do this, it's a very natural thing. And I think with Christ, and when you look, anytime we say Christ, it's the idea that God's anointed didn't shrink from physical contact or acts of service or receiving gifts or words of affirmation or quality time. Mary can easily be found expressing her love for Jesus in all of these different aspects or these different languages. Words of affirmation, she calls him Master. He calls her Mary in a very unique way. So we find both of them showing each other how much they love in this small section that we are going to read and how important this is to them. She is, of course, act of service. She's going to prepare his body, and he tells her and tells all of us, I didn't come to serve. I didn't come to be served, but I came to serve in my life. So we find that this is, of course, an act of love. We look at her with the idea of getting the spices and making sure these things are done. She's the one that's paying for all of this. She's the one that's taking care of all of this. She is one of those individuals that throughout his lifetime, she was one of his sponsors or one of his benefactors throughout his lifetime. Quality time, what better quality time can we think of than Mary Magdalene at the cross, at the tomb, in the garden? But today it's the touch me not. And this is where we find her reaching forth in this moment of revelation, so to speak, seeing something new for the first time. And her only response to this, of course, is physical touch. And this is where this marvelous passage comes to us. She has told the disciples that Jesus Christ isn't in the tomb. And so we find a great story of Peter and John running there. And John, they tell us, believes. And the beauty is they both go to their own homes. And we looked at how there's no doubt here that John goes home and talks to his aunt, who is the mother of Jesus Christ, and says, he's not there. He's risen. But throughout this whole period of time, now Mary finds herself at the tomb, Peter and John being gone. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping. And as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre. And seeing two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? And she said unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I don't know where they have laid him. And when she thus said this, she turned herself back, and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. And Jesus said unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? And she, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if you have borne him away, just tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. And then Jesus said unto her, Mary. She turned herself, and saith unto him, Master, Teacher, Rabbi. And Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father, and your Father, and to my God, and to your God. And Mary Magdalene came and told the disciples that she had seen the Lord, and that he had spoken these things unto her. My Father, your Father. This is a marvelous message that she's given to them, but they're all hearing these words for the first time. And they are words of affirmation. They are words of love that Christ is trying to present to these individuals. So when you look at this, there's this marvelous meeting when Christ meets Mary in the garden, and the whole thing is just clouded in this beautiful love. It's this love fest that's going on between two individuals that truly do love each other. And in this moment, she just finds herself doing the thing that is most natural to her, and that is a hug. I think many of you are that way. I got a text from a few people this week, and they said to me, I just can't wait to hug you when I see you. I know these individuals, and I know that they're huggers, and I'm a tapper-outer. But it's their way of saying to me that I love you, and I care for you, and It is a way that they can. It's physical touch. It's one of the languages that they use to show individuals their affection and the joy that they have in seeing somebody else. So we can imagine, as we think of Mary during this period of time, who is saying that she can't hug him at this time, how she probably waited her entire lifetime just to be able to do that again. And I think most of us know something like that in our life. I think there's going to be a lot of hugging and joy in heaven. I think physical touch will very much be a part of surely our entrance, and I think it'll be very much a part of our time there. And it will also be our time again at Lighthouse Bible Church. These times too will pass, and we'll find ourselves in a new season. And in that new season, I'm hoping that we will allow the Holy Spirit to take from these words that are now laid into our minds and will be deposited into our subconscious to come forward when somebody needs something in our life, and we would be able to do what Mary Magdalene does at this time and what her Lord does for her. When he says Hail Mary to her, there's this beauty in this. There's this sense that he's speaking this word in Aramaic, in a language that she knows, and it's a way that she would know. My wife went to the therapist this week, and her knee was the best it had ever been. It was at 113, and she came home and she was just thrilled that she was 113, and I could just see how happy she was. It's she's kind of been like at what would you say, a standstill for a while, and then all of a sudden, all this work and all of this therapy had paid off. And so now I find myself in these times of trouble saying to her, "Hey, 113, hey, 113," and she loves this. She loves it, and so now we actually call her the 113 Master or something like that. And I think in this respect, it's something that is between her and I. You might be able to use it, but it would be nowhere near as touching as it would be for me and her. For example, I look forward, like Mary, to getting to heaven. And when I get to heaven, I'm going to be amazed, like all of you. Eye is not seen, ear is not heard. We don't know what it's going to be like, but it's just going to be jaw-dropping, according to the Apostle Paul. He's not allowed to tell us what he saw, but it was pretty impressive. But we will see those that we have loved as we get there. And I'm going to hear the words, "Hail, man." And everything else will be drowned out. Everything else will be gone. And I will see what I long to see. And my response will be physical touch. My response will be hugging. It's just, there's no other response that would come forward. And surely heaven isn't going to take that away from us, because this is one of those great responses that God has in life. I think it's the only response to these affirming words that we find during our life where somebody says something very nice to us. When Scott put this on the website a couple weeks ago, he said the old man has agreed to go on Facebook, and that might be the prayer of some of you. It's never something that I enjoy. In fact, I find myself having a hard time talking to a camera. I really enjoy seeing all of you, and the energy that you present to me when I preach, and the energy that I try, is what makes me, I think, a better preacher, a better man, a better teacher, a better pastor. So speaking to a room that is empty, except for Scotty, but he has work to do while I'm doing this, so he's making sure all this goes. And we do have a camera, as you can see, this week, so we've been able to invest in a few things that will be with us for the remainder of our time at Lighthouse Bible Church, and forever, I think. As long as we are here, we'll be able to use these things. But to hear this from Mary, and it's interesting because it says it's the first time ever I saw your face. It's that great song where all of a sudden you see something, and you might see somebody like I saw Michelle the first time ever I saw her face, and first time she ever, and that's good. But there's also other times that you see this. Something happens, something changes, and you say, "What's going on? You look different. There's something about you," and that's truly what is going on here with Mary and Jesus Christ. But her only response again is just from these affirming words, Mary, is touch. But for Mary, this is the second time that her master tells her something in this short period of time that is very difficult for her to hear. In fact, she can't hear it. She's deaf. She's deaf by grief. She's deaf by sorrow. She's deaf by the circumstances of this. And she's just not able to hear certain things. And I think that's true of all of us. And Mary wants us to know this is where she was at this period of time. And John hears this story, and I can imagine Mary telling him this story and saying, make sure you put this in your notes. I want people to know how I felt at this time. I want them to know that I couldn't hear what they were saying. I want them to know I couldn't even recognize who he was due to the difficulties that were going on in my life at this period of time. They tell us that the ear is the first up in the morning. And I would hardly agree with that. I am one of those individuals that's the first thing that my ears just wake up in the morning. When our children were little, I was the morning person, so I would be the one getting them up. And so I would wake them up with, this is the day that the Lord has made. And when our children are very little, that's something they're very excited to hear. And they see the excitement that you have for the day, and somehow or another you can instill this in them. But then, of course, they get into adolescence and teenage years, and the last song they want to hear in the morning is, this is the day that the Lord hath made. But it's also important for that period of time for you to start that day with affirmation, to start that day in a good way. I would do everything in my power not to start their day in a bad way, or to be in a bad mood, or to allow circumstances to change how this day should start for them. And I think when we see this in the life of Mary, for her not to be able to hear is one of the great curses of life, is not to be able to hear what you really need to hear. And how often in life the ear is the part that God wants to open, and he wants to open it so that we would be willing to listen to what he says. We're going to go back starting next week and then a few weeks after that to look at these great songs that we've kind of tried to analyze and get the gist of them. And Hannah, and it's the third, I think we had Mary, and then we had Moses, then we had Hannah. And we find Hannah writing this great song, and after this song, we find this boy that is the reason for the song, or the blessing that God gives her for the song. And we find Samuel saying these words, "Speak, Lord, for your servant listens." But he doesn't say listen, he says, "Speak, Lord, for your servant hears." And with a heart to understand and obey. I think that is so important in our life. One of the great singer-songwriters passed away this past year, and he had a great song, "She'll Listen to Her Heart." And I think when we look at that, there's often times in our life, everybody's trying to speak to us, and they're trying to tell us, or they're trying to woo us away from somebody. And in his thought, he simply said, listen to her heart. So I think we all know, do you hear what I hear? It's something that's important to us. And these angels who have been instructing Mary, or trying to instruct her, speaking to her heart, they realize they can't get through to her. These are a couple angels, and if you read all the different comments on this, the individual are saying she's turning away, she can't see because of the bright light, whatever it might be. These are all kind of assumptions that we have in our life, but truly they're not able to get through to her. It makes it easy for me because the Bible actually talks about ministers being angels, and they are also now given the responsibility to bring good news. A number of years ago, I went to my first and only pastor's conference. And it was at John MacArthur's church, and then Chuck Swindoll was right down the street, so we decided to drive down to Chuck Swindoll's church to see him, and it was a Sunday evening, and we got there, and one of the elders met us at the door, and we told him where we were from. He goes, "Oh, come on with me," and he took us right to the front row, and it was really good. We're sitting there, and Chuck Swindoll is just, he's on his game. I think he knew a bunch of us young pastors were in there, older pastors, some of them, and it was just marvelous to listen to him speak. And about halfway through, I went to talk to the elder that was sitting next to me, or at least just say amen to something he said, and he was sound asleep. And I said to myself at the time, take a note, Michael. If somebody can fall asleep during Chuck Swindoll, don't be offended if they fall asleep listening to you. And I think in this situation we find that these angels also say, we're not getting through. We don't, it's not something that we know, or it's not something that we can give to her. He's taken this message from the angels, and he has given it to us, whether you're a pastor or a lay person or whatever it might be. We're all priests under God, and we've all been given this responsibility to be able to share the good news in the way that you know. Like Mary's not trying to tell them, she doesn't have this ability to be a great debater with anybody. She's not an individual that's an expert in apologetics. She just is telling them and saying, I saw the Lord, he said he's going to his Father, our Father, your God, our God. It's a beautiful message that she is saying, but she does fall into this very rare group of Peter, Paul, and Mary. Now when I say Peter, Paul, and Mary, people from my generation will say, Peter, Paul, and Mary, what? And I wake up almost every day over the past number of years with a song that Peter, Paul, and Mary wrote. And it's a song that just ministers to me and helps me to start my day right. God does not give us overcoming life, but he gives us life as we overcome, as one of my book friends tells me. And so I always sing this Peter, Paul, and Mary song. Michael rode the boat ashore, hallelujah. Michael rode the boat ashore. And when times get tough and difficult, I say, Michael row, Michael row, Michael row. And there's this beauty of the song and the words of that song, but there's no comparison to what Peter, Paul, and Mary have. And that's that they all say, I have seen the risen Lord. It is marvelous. I think that there is a great misjustice to Mary at this period of time. It's talked about Peter was the first to see and others. And there is a lot of questions as to how all of these times the gospel writers fit. But I think it's pretty clear that Mary is the first one to be able to see him. I don't think she minds that the other individuals get this, but it's not something that Christ did not want us to know. I chose her to be the one to go tell the apostles. Peter and John were at that tomb. He could have told them to go and tell others, but he does not do that. In fact, he starts this whole thing with her with the same question, trying to get to her heart that the angels did. Why do you weep so? And the idea is, why are you so overwhelmed with grief? Like, can't you, like, he's looking right at her, and, she's thinking he's the gardener. Now, he knows that she's thinking he's the gardener, but he's like looking and thinking things are changing, and I'm not going to speak to you where you're at. I'm going to speak to you to where you need to be. So why are you so overwhelmed? It's as if he is saying, you were there with me. You saw me on that cross. You heard me say that it is finished. Did you take that to mean that I was done and finished? Or did you take that to mean something more? There's more to this than meets the eye. So she's not allowed to dwell in yesterday. And don't we all say, amen? What if we could just let our past go? Now, our past isn't something horrible that she has done, but it's this horrible experience that she's had to go through. But it was a divine purpose for her to go through this. It was a divine purpose for him to go through this. And how easy he uses her senses to pour water on one flame and to ignite another flame. And he sets her heart on fire simply by saying something nice, something in a way that she would see this. How important this is as a reminder to us, for those that we love dearly, to be able to say something that will set them on fire. For them to be able to get past the difficulties there and to be able to say something to them that is good. How words of affirmation are supposed to and should show the love that we have for someone else and to set their hearts on fire for a new season in their life. Maybe during this period of time you can simply say to somebody that's needed to hear this for a long period of time, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I've tried to make all kinds of excuses for this. There is no excuse. I'm sorry. Maybe you can say to somebody, you're forgiven. Maybe you can say, you're my dream come true. Maybe you can sing a song, I want to hold your hand. And maybe you can just simply say to them, first thing in the morning, it's so good to see you. And I'm glad to be here with you. I've missed you. And I think during this period of quarantine, I realized that even though we've been living together, we've been far apart. This has reminded me what a special person you are and how much you do for our family, how much you do for me. And my absence now recognizes that my heart should have been grown fonder of you as opposed to falling farther away from you. But in this season, I think of being housebound, doing all you can not to let your speech or your words or your disposition be a source of dissension. That's not to say You might, at this period of time, after you've been stuck in the house with everybody, simply say to them, get that smirk off your face, or what are you looking at me like that for? I'm not saying that these things are all, everything has to be beautiful. Sometimes a good rebuke is a good thing. It seems the implications is that she falls at his feet in this humble adoration. She finally, at this period of time, sees through the tears and the grief and all of these things. The Apostle Paul says, for this reason I fall on my knees. For this reason, or for this cause, I bow my knees. Every week before I get up here to preach or teach a Bible study, I always kneel down in my office and I say, for this cause I'm coming before you. I'm going to be speaking on Mary Magdalene today. I'm going to read these words. These are your words. This is your story. Help me to be out of the way and help individuals to be able to be touched by these words. But I think there's this idea of falling on your knees. Like it's the starting of a whole new time. It's like there's a whole new covenant being established here. And I think this is a beautiful thing for Mary to do, to fall right at his knees. Oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. The thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Fall on your knees. I think at the beginning they fell on their knees. They fell on their knees throughout his lifetime. But here with Mary falling on the knees of Jesus Christ or the feet of Jesus Christ, she wants him all to herself. She wants this moment. She's had moments along with him that have been very special, from being delivered, I'm sure, to just simply asking him questions, to making his suppers, or to washing his clothes. Who knows what all that she did. I would think the sky's the limit for what Mary Magdalene has done in her life. I think she is truly a servant benefactor in the most great way that you can find somebody like that. And yet, she can't have this anymore. This is done for this season of her life. So for the remainder of her time on earth, there won't be that moments that she had with him in her life. But by faith, she can have this. And he's made it clear to them, I must go so the Comforter could come. So he's had his moment, and now the Holy Spirit is here. And the beauty of this is all of us can be praying in the morning to Jesus Christ. We can have him all to ourselves. It's a beautiful thing to think that he's not saying, okay, wait a minute, Michael, if somebody else is talking to me. He has this ability. He's omniscient. He's omnipresent. He's just God. And so he is our mediator between the Father. He is our God. The Father is our God. And so we find Christ in this situation simply telling her that things are going to be different. And even though you might think they're bad or worse, they're not. This is going to be far better the way that we have set this up. He used to be ascending to heaven, and she can't find herself dangling at her feet. I kind of amused reading this, thinking, well, he's going to ascend, and then later he's going to ascend. At this period of time, is she going to hold on to his feet when he starts ascending and kind of follow him up into heaven? And she shows up at heaven's gate, and everybody's going, how did she get here? And simply she wouldn't let go. And I can see that. I can see the feeling that she had. I thought I lost you, and I'm never going to let you go again. But she, of course, submits to her Lord, and that's why she is named throughout history, or at least the history of the past 2,000 years in the Christian church, as the apostle to the apostles. I have seen him. He is alive. He is risen from the dead. And so we see this, and we see somehow or another in her life that she's able to hear. She's able to see this. And there's a beauty in the story in that there's somebody that is in a very difficult season. They come out of the season and things are better. And I think for us, we have been in a very difficult season. And as a church fellowship, we have been in difficult seasons before. And as every family has been through difficult seasons, our country has been through difficult seasons. There's never a time where everything goes perfectly all the time. Never have any of us in our lifetime been through anything like this. The last time, 1918. So this isn't something that we're even familiar with. But I think when we look at it, we'll realize that we too have come through this, and we are ready for another season. We're ready for another time. And just like in Mary's life, she couldn't imagine that things could get better. They did get better. So hopefully next week we will take a little time to look again at these marvelous songs that came out of a special revelation. Seeing your life and what God has in store for your life from a new perspective. Whether it's Gabriel talking to Miriam, whether it's Moses going through on the dry land through the Red Sea, whether it's Hannah having this baby Samuel, this baby that she's hoped for, or whether it's David in the myriad of ways in his life that he comes up with a new song. He is truly the great singer-songwriter of the Judeo-Christian tradition. There is nobody that even compares or is even close to him. And we're going to start again, probably not next week. Next week we'll try to kind of remind ourselves of Mary, and we'll remind ourselves of Moses and Hannah. But then we'll go back to David's song near the end of his life, and we'll glean some of the things that he wants us to know about God from a song that he wrote. My hope is that the coming week will find us seeing new things. I know that we can be blind, and I hope that we'll be able to hear new things. We'll not just be caught up in our own little world, but we'll allow our ears to hear other things. Because God does want to speak to us. He does want us to know that there are things that we can be doing during this period of time. And my hope is that you'll be able to do those things. Again, I want to remind you, if you'd like to come by and just sit and pray, surely you are welcome to do that. And pray as we continue to try to row this boat ashore during these difficult times. So may the grace, mercy, and peace of God our Father, and the Lord Jesus Christ be with you all. Amen.